Welcome, team, to this month's Lunch and Learn with Terry, Francesca, and myself, where we discuss different topics of behavior and behavioral elements and how we can elevate our performance, our productivity, and our quality of life. Today is about performance, productivity, and the other P word, procrastination, which I think all of us at some point in time have experienced in some way, shape, or form. So I am very, very excited to get into this. Francesca did toss into the chat a quick poll of what is it that causes you to procrastinate, and a second one. If you're a perfectionist, type me into the chat right now. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to own my stake. That is definitely me. That keeps me from getting some things done sometimes, but we are going to dig into this. So, Francesca, you always do such a beautiful job of this. Would you mind giving just a quick rundown? What are behavioral elements? What is it? Why should we care? And obviously, with 22 people here joining us, they do. So tell them a little bit about behavioral elements. Fire away.
Absolutely. No pun intended to fire away. I love it, Jay. Thank you. Uh, Thank you all for being here today. If you are new and behavior elements is new to your repertoire, we're so excited to introduce you to this. So essentially, this is not based on, we're not measuring personality. That's more something that's concreted by about 6 or 7 years old of the coloring book that will kind of color in to for the rest of our lives. There's a little bit of adjustment that can be made, but this is more to do with behavior. So we're dealing with neuroplasticity, growth, change, and evolving. So with fire, when we relate to that today, when we refer to that, that's going to be one of the core drives, the drive to acquire. So fire is typically driven by achievement, growth, results, possibility. They're often very energetic, visionary, competitive, and very action oriented. So naturally, they kind of say, what's next? With water, that's the drive to bond. If you hear us talking about that, water is typically driven by relationships, belonging, trust, and connection. They're often quite compassionate, collaborative, loyal, people focused. And naturally, what they ask is, how is everyone doing? When you hear us refer to air, that's the drive to learn. So air is often driven by knowledge, understanding, curiosity, and improvement. They're very thoughtful, strategic, and they love asking questions. Naturally, their ask is why. And of course, with Earth, the drive to defend. So Earth is naturally driven by stability, safety, responsibility, structure, and protecting what matters. So they're very dependable, organized, consistent, and focused on reducing risks. So naturally, their question that they ask is, how do we do this well? Quality over quantity. Back to you, Jay.
Awesome. And thank you for that, Francesca. All right. If you have taken the assessment, toss into the chat what is your primary element. I'll ask our hosts to do that as well. For those of you that know me, you know that I am a very high fire element, followed by air. All right. I see some water, 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 fire, earth. Hello, water, earth, fire. All right. We are going to dig into this. So, Terry, you are an air element. That is your primary with the water backing. Talk to me. What does procrastination look like in your world? Do you do it on occasion, here, there, or wherever? What is it that inspires you to do it or inspires you to not do it? Let's hear what you got.
I'm a C all day in Francesca's poll. There is always something more interesting than whatever I'm doing, or at least there used to be. And I've been messing around with this idea a little bit, talking about attention deficit disorder, because everybody's running around talking about they have ADD or ADHD. I don't think that's as much the issue as us having intention deficit disorder.
Mm.
Once you get really clear on what it is you want, once you set some intentions that actually matter to you, the ability to get things done goes up dramatically. So I would ask you, where does your attention flow during the course of the day, and how does that map to your intentions for the day?
All right. So hearing from the area, I want to stick with this for just a moment. And I love your intention deficit because I think that's something that probably a lot of us suffer from. While the clinical aspects of ADHD is not something that we can diagnose with behavioral elements,
At all.
it is something that we are looking to study. So this is something that we do want to see. Is there an alignment, a correlation, not a causation, but a correlation between it? We know that in ADHD, there's a number of different neurotransmitters that are essentially at play, whether it's the dopaminergic desire circuit, it's also has a lot to do with the learning circuit and the attention economy. So from an air perspective and the non-clinical side of things, when you get distracted, what do you do to bring yourself back into focus? How do you avoid, right? Because you are a person that gets stuff done. There's no question on that. And I know that you've got one of the higher air scores that we can get and one of the lowest earth scores that we can get. So that structure piece, like what is it that you do to bring yourself back into focus when C, for those of you that are looking at the poll that Francesca had put there, I get distracted by something more interesting. That was the C. So what is it that you do to pull yourself back, Terry?
I ask, how does what I'm doing currently impact future Terry? Right. So
Mm.
I have a long history of thanking past Terry for setting future Terry up for success or cursing past Terry for just derailing me for things I didn't do. I'm equal opportunity, baby. And so, but that question, how does this impact where I'm going? Is a really cool level reset. And to be fair and clear, my ability to be productive is grown dramatically since, and you were very kind to say one of the lowest scores instead of absolute zero in Earth. That was nice of you. You can't get a lower score in Earth than I received. It's fundamentally impossible. Um, but realizing that those things, those earthy moves, take far more energy than I typically like to allot to things, I map my earthy things to time in my day when I'm at that right energetic level. And it's not the same as, hey, I'm going to hop on this lunch and learn and bring some heat. That is a different energy than I'm going to go through this spreadsheet that is laborious and hurts my eyes to even think about. It's a different energy. So I try and map that work to the time when I'd be able to sit still long enough to actually, I don't want to go crazy and say complete something, but at least give it a really good start. The other thing I do to trick myself is just give this 10 minutes. In the crazy amount of things that we can accomplish and put a bow on in 10 minutes that we put off for 3.5 weeks staggers me.
I love that. There's multiple different tactics. There's the just put 10 minutes into it, which by the way, I've done that myself, found that I've completed a lot of the things in that 10-minute time frame, but I've also found once I started on it, I just finished it. So I had been procrastinating, but if my brain felt 10 minutes, I can do 10 minutes. That's fine. I'm just going to dig into this for 10 minutes. And then I just ended up completing the thing. So I love that tactic. I want to go back to something that you said, though, because I've heard Francesca use the 8-year-old and the 80-year-old version of
Love it.
herself as well. You know, future Terry thanks you for this, or future Terry admonishes you for this. Francesca, do you want to comment on that? Because I love the way that you've structured that. I know you've used that in coaching that we've done with Ford and everything else. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Are you wanting to go into my piece or just comment on that one thing for now? Okay, beautiful, beautiful. So for that one thing, I would say, yeah, it's something that I definitely bring up in coaching a lot. And it's kind of like thinking about your younger self and thinking, okay, if that younger self were to meet your present self today for a coffee or a walk, would they be proud of the choices and the decisions that you're making today? And are we able to make that little self proud? And similarly to that person that's looking up to us, the person that we're going to look ahead to at our 80-year-old version of us is going to look back, shake her hand, and say, thank you so much for working as hard as you did for me. That's also the person that I'm looking ahead to say, is me putting this off really going to help that version of me? It's probably not. So if I just start, even like you said, that 10 minutes can make a huge difference.
I love that. And I do think that that is a powerful frame, not even just for procrastination, but also for a number of other things like the choices that we're making or the decisions that we do, whether we're going to, prioritize our health right now, or whether we're going to prioritize spending time with friends and family right now. So I think that that's such an important tool. So thank you, Terry, for kicking that off. Francesca, let's dig into you. You are fire primary with a water backing, which shows up very different than my fire primary and air backing. Um, let's start with you, though. What does procrastination look like in your world?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny for me, every time I think about the word procrastination, at least in the last like 5 to 6 years, I always think back to Oprah. She had talked about when she had shared her experience when she was asked to deliver the Harvard commencement speech, and she kept putting it off and putting off writing it. And she eventually realized that she wasn't procrastinating because she didn't care about it, obviously, but she was procrastinating because she cared so much. And the assignment carried so much meaning that her brain wanted to protect her from the possibility of not doing it justice. And that really changed the way she thought about procrastination. And I think her quote was something along the lines of, the bigger the assignment, the more resistance that she felt. And I've really thought about that every time that I'm feeling any procrastination or resistance to something, and reminding my brain it's because it's important. And I think our brains are just kind of designed to seek comfort and kind of avoid that threat. So if we perceive that something's risky, whether that's failure, rejection, conflict, or just uncertainty of like losing control, our brain's going to choose the short-term relief over the long-term progress. So for me, it's like I'd rather clean the whole house or scrub the floors or research just one more thing, or I'll wait till tomorrow, or whatever it is. And it feels productive in that moment, but often that avoidance is just in disguise of me asking myself, like, what am I trying to avoid here? And what is my brain trying to protect me from? So for my story, many of you know I'm high fire backed by water. At first glance, people often assume that fire just doesn't procrastinate at all because we're action oriented, but the truth is we absolutely can. Mine looks a little bit different. For me, procrastination usually shows up in two ways. First is my fire. It's usually if something excites me, then that's great. But if it doesn't excite me, challenge me, or kind of align with my bigger vision, I'll naturally gravitate towards the next exciting idea. And I'll find myself kind of starting 5 different projects before finishing the first one because my brain is chasing the momentum. And then my second is water. So if it's more of a water driven procrastination, if the task involves potentially disappointing someone, or kind of like what Oprah said in terms of like it means so much to her, she doesn't want to let someone down, having a difficult conversation, risking letting someone down in general, I'll notice myself delaying. And it's not because I don't know what to do, it's just because I care deeply about preserving the relationship. So the biggest thing that I've learned is that when I catch myself procrastinating, instead of asking, why am I being lazy? I ask this question, what am I protecting? And from there, that changes everything.
That is such a powerful reframe. And the reality is that is often what is generating procrastination. And, even from your poll that you had done earlier, and I'm going to toss the responses from the earlier poll into the chat. Let me toss that in there right now. I got it copied and saved. But all of those different responses, and audience, I want you to take a look at this, because whatever you answered, I saw some B's, I saw some all of the above. Each of these responses is protecting us from something. A, for example, is protecting us from, I don't know, I don't want to feel like a failure, I don't want to have to ask a question, I don't know where to start. This is that sort of fear. B, I keep trying to make it perfect. This is the fear of looking bad or potentially not living up to expectations or anything else. So asking that question, that awareness question, I think is so critical as a starting point. What is it that I'm hiding from? What is it that's creating the conditions for procrastination? But going deeper and going into the emotional side of it, because procrastination is not just a behavior, it's an emotional reaction. And that's really important for us to remember. So I'm going to jump in on that, and I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what Francesca said. As a high flyer, I typically I have been looked at as somebody who is highly productive. I generally don't stop. I'm always moving. And I used to think that it wasn't procrastination, it was prioritization. I just prioritize. And sometimes things on the list get deprioritized. But exactly what Francesca said was oftentimes my choice and what I was prioritizing was coming from some type of an emotional reaction. And let me give you an example of this. And I've shared a little bit about this before, but I've got a little bit of a neurodivergence when it comes to emotional fluency. And let's say that Terry sends me an email into my email inbox that says, Jay, I'm struggling and I'm having these feelings, and this is what's bothering me, and so on and so forth. And Francesca sends an email at the same time. Both of them arrive exactly. And Francesca's is, Jay, I want to know how I can get the next set of sales. I am going to be answering Francesca's email first. Every time, twice on Sunday, and I never would have made that understanding of why I made that decision if it wasn't for actually becoming self-aware and saying, huh, I'm a little uncomfortable figuring out how I'm going to respond to Terry, what I want to say to Terry, how I'm going to emotionally show up in this situation. That's going to take a lot of energy from me versus Francesca's email. That's easy. That's fun. That's, yes, let's do that. So I would prioritize in many cases based on that sort of unrealized emotional energy that was having to go into whatever it is that I didn't really want to do. That can be valuable in some cases. Cleaning the house is a valuable pastime, not at the expense of your friend Terry that needs an email answered to feel better. You know, handling the sales conversation is an important thing to do, not at the cost of something else. And there's a number of tools that I've tried to incorporate into my life to make sure that the things that I'm procrastinating on are not procrastinated. Let me start. Thank you. That's very kind in the chat. Let me start with this. Motivation is not the antidote to procrastination. Let me say that one more time. Motivation is not the antidote to procrastination. Motivation is a finite resource. It is like attention, it is finite. We do not have unending amounts of it, and we can't just motivate ourselves to overcome procrastination. We do have to address the underlying pieces. So let's dig into some of these different aspects. And audience, as always, if you have questions, if you have comments, please toss those into the chat. Let us specifically guide some different conversations or topics that may give you tools that will help you navigate whatever your challenge or situation is. And trust me, if you have it, we all have it because we're all human and we're operating on the same hardware. So let's talk about the I don't know where to start. Okay. Because I've had that feeling. I'm going to assume that Terry or Francesca have had that feeling at some point in time. Like, I don't even know where to begin on this. Like, what do I do? Francesca, let's start with you. When you get that sort of sense of, I don't know where to start, what do you do to sort of shift into getting started? Like, what does that look like for you? Because I know it's going to be a little bit different for me as a fire, and I'm just really curious.
Absolutely. I mean, it really depends. It can go one of two very dramatically different ways. There's either the way of me being like, yeah, I'm gonna have to put this off. But I would say 99% of the time I visualize the outcome. So for example, in 2020 or 2021, I wanted to start a podcast. And all of my friends around that time that wanted to start a podcast are like, I need the perfect studio and I need the perfect equipment and I need this and I need that. And I was like, I have a phone and a laptop. I guess I'm good. I started my podcast the next day. Because for me, I thought I'm going to be maybe 2 years ahead of all the different people that are waiting to get all the proper equipment. And then by the time I have my momentum, maybe I can build up to getting the equipment that I want. And I'm really glad that I started when I did. And I think that's often what a lot of my friends are like, well, how did you have the courage to do that? I'm like, I don't know, I just did it. So I think for me, it's more so visualizing what I want it to become. So also in 2021, I wanted to do a speaking conference. And I literally just had a chat with one of my friends. He's a men's coach and he wanted to get on more stages. So I was like, hey, I want to do an event. Would you be one of my speakers? He's like, sure. When? I said, I think I'll put it together in 2 weeks. He's like, are you crazy? I'm like, yeah, why not? I booked a venue that day. I'm like, well, I guess I have to do it now. I made some lanyards, like, got the lanyards printed. Not a lot to make an event, but it was enough for me. And by the time I knew it, I had 5 speakers and an audience of 100 in 2 weeks. no, it wasn't perfect, but I was really damn proud of the outcome. So when you visualize that, and now all of a sudden you have momentum, and I've done about 20 since. So that's my biggest advice to all of you. Visualize, make a little vision board of like, oh my gosh, what would that day look like? If you start today, I mean, you're already one day ahead. I know it seems scary, but like Jay and Terry said, just spend 10 minutes on it. 10 minutes might be the little piece of resistance that pushes you forward.
I love that. And having spoken at one of your events, two of your events now, and having been to them, they are incredible. And I'm always impressed. I love that you start with the end in mind. And I'm going to share mine before I go over to Terry here in a second, because I am the exact opposite. The Earth fans in the audience are going to actually love this. This is where my Earth is my lowest element. Both Francesca and Terry will tell you I have a lot more earth than you would expect me to have, or at least I've trained myself in this. But for me, when I don't know where to start, I will literally sit down and start writing out steps and just, what do I need to do? I need to research. I need to respond. I need to do this. I need to do this. And I will create an entire list. Now, when I'm making the list, it is a brain dump. It doesn't mean that that's the order that I'm going to get started in. That comes second, is when I look at the order of the list and then I start going through and saying, okay, this has to come before this. This has to start here. I need this before I can do this part, et cetera, et cetera. So as I am doing that, I actually very, very strongly lean into my earth process systems part of my brain to say, what is it that I need to do first? What is it that I need to do second? What is it that I need to do third? If I don't know what the answer is, then that is what I put. I don't know what the answer is. I need to talk to Terry. I need to research this on Google. I need to go to Chat GPT. I need to go to the library. I need to talk to somebody about this, but I will literally put the steps into order. So then that way I don't have to think about that. I can just focus on what the outcome or result is going to be. But getting that sort of like first things first going for me, or seeing what the logical steps are, oftentimes at least helps me overcome that first challenge of I don't know where to begin. Francesca, go ahead.
I was just thinking about what you just said, Jay, and I'm wondering for our audience, if you were to put in the chat one thing you'd like to accomplish by the end of 2026, can you guys all put that in the chat? It can be business or personal. But one thing you've really wanted to accomplish this year, but you haven't started yet.
Love that. Terry,
I'm
your
gonna,
thoughts. Oh, go ahead.
oh
Let them
no,
put
oh
that in there and
sorry.
we'll come back. We'll come
Okay,
back to that.
okay, perfect.
Terry, toss your thoughts in and then we're going to go back to what Francesca was talking about with the chat.
So for me, there's two schools of thought that have been around forever, right? You take the easy wins and build some momentum, or you eat that frog. Um, I don't like frogs, and I don't necessarily care for easy. So I like Jay, it's in the prioritization. For me, and I do this with all my coaching clients too, I take your to-do list and we go through it line by line by line and look at three things. What do I need to do now? What do I need to do next? And what do I need to do never? Now you have three very specific lists. The now is probably the shortest. The never is probably the longest. And I'm not saying crumple up the paper and throw it out and have it truly be never, but it's not now and it's not next, which means it should not be occupying valuable bandwidth inside of your head, right? What we really need to do is clear as much space to focus on the things that matter that we can. So that's usually my process. I went from I do 57 things a day in a anywhere from like a quarter ass to a full ass perspective. And I don't always half ass things. I don't want to say I do. But the idea of moving it into the whole Monty in five or six things that really have to get done, that are really going to move the needle, and again, align to, as Francesca would say, where 80-year-old Terry wants to be. That's the metric. That's the measure.
Love that, Terry. Francesca, I'm going to go back to you in a second, but I'm going to comment on this. For those in the audience that want a particular tool that's related to that, this is one that I personally use as well. It's called the Ivy Lee method. Ivy Lee method.
Go on.
Ivy Lee was a long story short, Ivy Lee was a consultant, an organization that was worried about productivity as well as their quality, had reached out to Ivy Lee, said, hey, what can you do? Ivy came in, worked with their managers, and essentially had each one of their managers, they were only allowed to set 6 priorities for the day, 6 tasks, 6 big tasks that had to get done. You start with number 1, you finish it. You go to number 2, you finish it. You go to number 3, you finish it. 4, finish it. 5, finish it. 6, finish it. If you don't finish wherever you left off, that starts your next day, and you add however many priorities, and that's your focus point. Once you get those priorities done, that's when you can start doing all of the other things, the extra things, the things that don't, the things that add up. Even if there's a fire, you focus on your priorities. Within 90 days, he was cut like $500,000 check because he ultimately ended up saving this. But that's called the Ivy Lee method. I use it personally. There are some days when at 2 o'clock p.m., I go, hey, you know what, Francesca, let's go to the gym. I'm done with my priorities for the day. Let's go do that now. I might do work later. We might do work later, but that's the priorities. That's what moves all those balls forward fast. It is a powerful tool. So I love that, Terry. Francesca, I'm going to kick it back to you because I know that you had asked a question into the chat. Go ahead and fire away on that.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I love what Terry and Jay just said. Thank you for sharing those. Those are awesome. So I was just reading some of the things that came through in the chat of the one thing that you'd love to get done before the end of the year. Now I'm curious, what's the fear? If you can put in the chat, like, what is it that's holding you back? Fear could be anything, whatever the reservation or hesitation is.
What's the barrier? Yep.
Yeah. Angela says, not knowing what I want, what I don't know. Absolutely.
I've felt that before, Angela, where it's just like, I don't want to do this right this second because there's too many unknowns. I don't know what I don't know. And I will say this, that when it's in email format, waiting the 3 or 4 days usually just makes it more anxious. It doesn't actually give me the unknowns. So that's me personally on there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Things not within my control, unknown, stability, cost of things, upcoming change in administration, time to finish it, too many other priorities, caretaker.
Yep. I'm
I
seeing
see you,
this.
Cheryl, and your 94-year-old dad. You're amazing. Jen says failure. Okay, I'm going to put a couple different reframes. So these are some of the things that can help me in terms of like if you're a failure, when your brain says, if I fail, people will judge me. If I fail, I prove I'm not good enough. If I fail, I shouldn't even start. So different reframes could just be like failure is the opposite of success. It's data. Every expert was once a beginner, and done teaches me more than perfect ever will. The other thing that I always say too, if I knew I couldn't fail, what would I do today? Is the other one that I absolutely love. If I knew I couldn't fail, what would I do today? What I want all of you to do in the chat is I want you to write down one thing that you can do this year that can move you closer to that goal. Even just one thing, one small thing. Maybe Jay and Terry can give an example of one of their things that they can do to move them closer to one of their goals. Even if it's just a micro habit that'll bring them
Yeah,
towards what they want.
I want to jump in on the and maybe do a little bit deeper dive because I do see some of those failure questions and the fears of failures I think are related to the B point in your original thing, the sort of perfectionism. And that's something maybe we can dig a little deeper on there. I am a perfectionist at 100%, and I do not ever want to put anything out, whether it's thought leadership, whether it's a article, whether it is a social media post. I will sit and toil over that for days, procrastinating, hitting the button because I want to make sure that it is exactly what I need it to be and that there's no mistakes or anything else like that. That has held me back a lot of different times. I've started to move forward from there and I've been able to manage that. But I think this is a really important discussion because perfectionism comes from essentially a fear of failure, a fear of being looked at wrong, or a fear of that somebody's going to admonish you. Terry, what are maybe some of the things? I know you coach a lot of clients, sort of like getting past the fear of failure of getting on a stage, or getting past the fear of that sort of perfectionism of just get it done and do it. What are some of the things that you would look at in regards to that sort of perfectionism, fear of failure piece?
So there's the thing that holds us back. Ryan Holiday would tell you that the obstacle is the way, right? So most of us don't have intellectual gaps. We have behavioral gaps. We know what we should be doing, right? But that doesn't mean we will be doing it. And so I look at would, could, and should an awful lot is different frameworks and different ideas behind where we are. The other thing that I think also matters is our ability to just start. And we talked a little bit about this earlier. If we don't just take the first step, then it doesn't matter. And I dropped this in the comments way early on in this session. Perfectionism to me is way too subjective because my perfection is different than Jay's perfection, is different than Francesca's perfection, is different than everyone in here's perfection. So, whose perfection are we actually chasing? My goal and what I work with my clients is get it as good as you think you can get it, as quickly as you can get it there. Then get it out in front of people and call it a draft. You don't have to say this is the finished product. Say this is version one. Get it out, get feedback, make it better, repeat. That to me is the process because otherwise you're going to spend years writing that book or whatever the case may be that you're actually actively working on. The last thing, and this is the hardest thing for me because I'm an inborn natural bred promoter, is to shut the heck up about it until it's actually done. Not everybody needs to know your every single move, right? And so part of that fear of failure is I told a bunch of people and now I'm worried that I'm going to let them down. Well, you can't let them down if they ain't expecting it.
I love that. And I hear you, and I heard that little so just to bring everybody else. And this is such a great point because this is exactly one of the things is I have been writing a book for those that don't know, and I am sharing it out loud, so I probably shouldn't, but I have been writing a book for the better part of 10 years. I've gotten to page 10 a number of times, deleted it, started over because I didn't like it. I've gotten to page 86. That's where I'm currently at and kind of hit some level of writer's block, which is my own perfectionism again. With that being said, it has been a journey of not feeling like it's good enough, not feeling like it's enough, not feeling like it's robust enough. And that is one of the things that I am still struggling with on a daily basis. I do a little bit of writing. Now, this is what I am doing to overcome that. I haven't stopped. I've slowed down, but I haven't stopped. I will write at least 5 to 10 sentences every single week. I don't care if I'm 90 in this book, it will get published. It may be slow progress. It may not be where I want. Those 5 sentences I'm proud of. I know it because I put the energy, the effort, and the intention behind those sentences, and I'm not looking back. I think that's been one of my things from perfectionism, and maybe this is the tool, is that those sentences in 2 years from now, I might look at those sentences and go, God, if any of you give me a yes or no in the chat, if anybody's ever looked at like their old high school paper or an old college paper and just been like, oh my God, how did I pass that class? I've done that. Does anybody else tell me somebody out there has done this where you found like an old paper, you looked at it and you were like, what the hell was I thinking? Like, oh my gosh, like I've had a couple and I'm like, that's like just embarrassing, right? I'll publish some of those at some point in time just for fun because I do think that they're moderately hilarious. But your future self is always going to be wiser, more experienced, more knowledgeable than your present and or your past self. Hopefully, because we're all growing, we're all learning, we're all developing. So, judging who you were 5 years ago, 5 days ago, is probably not really a fair lens to look through. And that has actually helped me quite a bit. So that and alongside of what you had said, Terry, is adopting the principles of innovation and design thinking, fail fast, learn quick, modify and prototype and get it out there. And we can always make edition 2 or edition 3 or edition 4 as necessary. Francesca, go for it.
Absolutely. I was just reading some of the comments in terms of what all of the audience said in terms of if failure wasn't an option, what would they do? I noticed Lisa, and I thought maybe I would just comment on this. She says, if I knew I couldn't fail, I would start a podcast for parents with children with disabilities. Not only am I technologically lacking, but I would worry no one would listen or participate. Lisa, I want to share with you. So I had the first iteration of a podcast years ago. And last year, I was chatting with a girlfriend. I was telling her about this story about how when I was younger, I went to sit on this couch and I was like at a new school. I was really young and they didn't make room for me on the couch. And I said to her that I wanted to make my life about making room for other people on this figurative couch. And it started this concept of I wanted to start a podcast on it. Back when I had my other podcast, I had a larger home and everything like that. The home that Jay and I live in, it's quite small. And when I had started this podcast last March, we don't have a lot of space, and Jay is on continual Zoom calls, as am I. And so the room that I had that had the best acoustics was the bathroom. I know that sounds really silly. Silly. I sat on the floor. My laptop was the thing that had the music playing for the background music, and my phone, just my phone, was what recorded it. In like just sitting on the floor in the bathroom. Talk about not being technologically savvy. I'm quite good with technology, but I chose the simple route because it's all I could do in the moment. And I literally thought the same thing as you. No one's going to listen to this. No one's going to care. Within 3 months of being consistent, 50,000 plays. 50,000. I was just like, oh no, people are actually listening to this. But it was a sign for me to keep going that there was a message that's really valuable there. And I'm going to say something to you that the idea that you have is not only going to be incredibly powerful, but it's going to change lives. So I encourage you, please start, even if it means sitting on the floor of your bathroom with your laptop on your phone. It's going to make a difference. So if you need any help or any support, let me know. But for any of you in the chat, literally that first step can just mean recording one episode and seeing what happens.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And here's the thing, Lisa. Even and I'm very proud of Francesca and the 50,000 people she reached. My podcast has not hit 50,000 downloads, but even one person reaching out and saying, Jay, I did something that you said in your podcast, and my manager and my relationship, it's completely changed. I don't hate work anymore. I don't hate going to work anymore. That's enough. You, even if you hit one person that decides to listen and hears your message that day, you've made an impact on a human life. And that's so powerful. It's literally why Terry, Francesca, and I are in the business that we're in, is to make an impact on people's lives. Just think about it. One person that hears your message, that maybe shifts a perspective, maybe learns a new tool, and you can literally change a life right then and there. That's powerful. You don't have to hit 50,000. You could hit one. That's okay. And that's really, really meaningful. Plus, you are going to learn so much through that process. It's not only going to help the audience learn, but you are going to learn, and that's going to elevate your situation. I have learned more by doing the Talent Forge podcast about training, talent development than I ever thought that I would. And that's really cool. And I enjoy that learning piece. So get in there, do it. And yes. All right. So Francesca has offered to share that and to support you. By the way, if you're on Zoom, you can do a podcast. These things record, it creates audio streams. You could literally just take that, put it into Spotify, and guess what? You're done. It's that simple. Don't be afraid. See, this is where I love. We're solving people problems in real time. I love this. So, Francesca, I do want you to comment on the perfectionism thing, and specifically on the perfectionism. I do have one other comment when it comes to perfectionism that I share, whether it's managers doing it, but I want to hear what your comments are because you are a high performer. You've been somebody that was at the top of figure skating, of dance, of piano, of art, of all of the things that you do. And I know that you put a lot of pressure on yourself to really be a high performer. So, how have you navigated the pressures of perfectionism, the fears of failure? What does that look like in your world?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jay. I think it's a couple different factors. For those of you that don't know my background, I grew up, my parents put me in competitive figure skating, competitive dance, like 12 different genres of dance, musical theater, swimming, diving, piano, the whole works. I think they expected me to be good at maybe one thing and then just keep me in that. But just due to the circumstances of how I was born after my brother's loss, I kind of put a lot of pressure on myself to be as good as I possibly could at anything that I was put in. So they kept me in everything. And so from a very young age, I think there was like this an innate pressure on myself for everything to be quote unquote perfect, even my grades, whatever that was. Um, and what I noticed is that like my why had to get clarified really, really quickly. And it wasn't until maybe I was like 8 years old that this was kind of like finessed for me in my brain, whether I realized it or not. It's kind of what my North Star became. So I think one of the things that we can do when it comes to perfectionism when I reflect back on my childhood and how that's translated to my adult life, is that in those particular seasons, it was really hard for me to think about the pressure that my mom and dad put on me, my teachers, my coaches. I wanted to make everyone proud. Like Terry was saying, it's kind of like releasing a lot of those expectations and that fear of failure from all these people. What I ended up doing is I ended up creating like a North Star. And when I was younger, it was my brother. So he was no longer alive. And I thought, I'm going to dedicate every single one of my solos, my performances to him. That was it. I wasn't worried about what the judging panel or adjudicators or my coach or any of them, just him. And I dedicated every single performance to him. And that changed the game. Yes, I won and I won almost every medal and I was very successful because I worked very hard. But it never was about the medals or the winning. It was, did I make him proud? And I know that may be a little bit of like skewed thinking, but maybe there's somebody in your life that you think that's your North Star. It might be somebody in the chat had talked about their 94-year-old dad. Maybe that's who they're thinking about. Maybe they're thinking about their 80-year-old self or their 8-year-old self. Maybe you're thinking about your partner, whoever that is. But think about somebody who really inspires you that you're wanting to make proud every day. Maybe that is yourself. That's the best answer. But that was something that really helped me overcome my perfectionism because it wasn't about keeping 80 people happy. It was just, hey, maybe I could make him proud today. So that would be my advice. But I think when it comes to perfectionism, kind of what Terry was mentioning at the very beginning, and something that Jay and I are trying to get to in this call too, is that what is perfect? I don't even know if there is perfect. I think that we've somehow skewed the mentality of like that there's some kind of perfect answer or perfect way of being, but is there really that out there? I don't think so. I think it's kind of like how um, that certainty is like what's that quote that they always talk about how like that knowing is like it's lost on me at the moment. I apologize, but um there's a lot of things in life that we think that we know. Oh, control, that's what it is. We think that we have control over things. We don't. It's all an illusion. It's like we can just do the best we can every day. So I think that once we realize that, there's not really a lot of perfect out there. It's just being the best you can be that day. And if it's better than yesterday, then you've won.
Accepting being perfectly imperfect. So, I will offer one other tactic. This is one that has really helped me. I ask myself a question, two questions actually, and I'm tossing it into the chat. So for those of you that are perfectionists, this one really made a huge difference for me. Is it wrong or is it wrong for Jay? Because those two things are very, very different. If it's wrong, it needs to be fixed. If it's wrong for Jay, sometimes it's better to just get it done and get it out there. So all right. See, Lisa, it's a sign today. I see that in the chat. It's a sign you were supposed to be here. All right. We are nearing the end of our shot here. Let's talk a little bit about some tactics. If we are in the earth space, all right, what is a tactic that you're going to share for earth elements to be able to move beyond something of procrastination. Now, remember, Earths are oftentimes going to be, they want more information, more data, more structure, more systems. So this is going to be a little bit of rapid fire. We're going to go through all four of the elements here. Terry, do you want to give us a shot? What is a recommendation? If you are an Earth element and a procrastinator, how do you navigate that forward?
Draft one. That's it, right? Get started, finish something, and then move on. Be comfortable with being a little uncomfortable, and that it doesn't have to be exact right now. You can make it exact later.
Love that. Francesca, your thoughts, Earth and moving beyond procrastination.
Yeah, asking Earth. I think the perfectionism aspect with Earth would be like, I'll start when everything is ready. Instead, just think, um, what is the kind of like what Terry says, what is the first version simply need to exist, not to be perfect.
Earths out there, here's two recommendations for you. Number one, set yourself a deadline, especially if there is not a deadline. Earths do not like to be late. They do not like to miss deadlines. They do not like to break rules. If you set yourself a deadline, I am allowing myself to think about this until Wednesday at 9 a.m. and then giving yourself the permission to act regardless of what other information that you would love to have before you do that. Secondly, is set up your system. Earths love the certainty. Sometimes we have to live in uncertainty. So manage what you can control, and that will give you the ability to navigate and push on that sort of things that you can take action on. All right, real quick, Terry, air. How does air get beyond procrastination?
Set yourself a deadline.
All right, so we've got a repeat of that one. You know what, we could probably use that across the board, can't we? Friend, you go
It
ahead.
don't listen, don't get completely lost in the air. Realize that ideas, while they can be useful and even rewarded, execution is what's absolutely meaningful and celebrated. Do the actual work that you're thinking about maybe doing.
Love that. Francesca for the air elements.
Absolutely. Limit your research time, set a timer, 10, 20, or 30 minutes on your research time, cap it, and then realize that the progress is better than having certainty. And just ask yourself, am I preparing or am I hiding behind preparation?
Love
Ooh,
that.
girl.
I'm going to take that and I'm going to kind of shift that a little bit. Airs, schedule yourself time for the innovation, for the creativity, for the thoughtfulness. Give yourselves space to do that and then allow the rest of your time to kind of be focused on actually getting the things done or doing the execution that Terry's talking about. All right, real quick, because we are coming close on time. Water elements, getting past procrastination, often related to the people or the energy around people. Terry, go.
I think the water piece is sometimes we have to do the thing that's right for us and not right for everybody else. Right. I do a lot of coaching with women and we talk about self-care a lot. And my ask, you don't have to put yourself first on the list. Just make sure you're on the damn list.
Hmm,
And I think water could really heed that advice.
love that, Francesca.
Absolutely. Have some safe accountability and then permission that like good enough is okay. And I think too, especially with water, a lot of the procrastination is going to be around conversations that are difficult. So just remembering that honesty builds trust. If your goal is a better relationship or friendship or, work relationship, that honesty is going to be huge. And asking yourself, like, am I delaying this because I'm protecting the relationship or because I'm afraid of how someone might respond?
Love that and love that awareness. And that's where I'm going to jump in there. And the water element is when we are wondering how other people are going to react to it, how they're going to think about it, or anything else. Give yourself a small focus group. It's just a small focus group. Maybe it's a trusted set of two colleagues that when you say, hey, is this okay? Or what are you thinking on this? Or I'm really nervous about this piece. Can you just give me a little encouragement, inspiration, learning, and or say, give me permission? Because when we have our little kind of focus groups, Terry and Francesca are part of my focus group. Like when I'm putting something out there, they generally see it far before anybody else is going to see it in the world. They're going to tell me, Jay, get this out there. This is great. Or Jay, you need a little bit of this. That gives me a little bit more confidence to move forward and actually get things published. So get yourself a little focus group that you trust that's going to be able to give you the positive reinforcement and or the support that you need to make sure that whatever it is that you need to get done is going to get done and you're not going to be judged. Last but not least, fire elements. How do we keep the fire from procrastinating? Terry, you're up.
Tie it to a game, man. Give it something that they can actually win and feel like they achieved.
Love that. Francesca.
I love it. And we always say, I want it to be big, or if it can't be exceptional, maybe I'll wait. So just put some public accountability sometimes, breaking it into sprints and competition or celebrating the progress over the perfection. But most of all, asking ourselves, where am I chasing excitement instead of finishing what actually matters?
Love that. I'll share one that is highly motivating to me on something that I'm procrastinating on or that I'm being perfectionist on. And this is a little bit of my kryptonite. Tell me that I can't do it. I hate it. And like I study psychology. I know what reverse psychology is. So when my team goes, "It's okay, Jay. It probably just wasn't meant to be." I know what they're doing. Like I know it, but it doesn't matter. It's just like, all right, welcome to focus mode. The next 18 hours of my life is going to be designated to getting this problem solved, and it's going to be solved right. So sometimes for a fire, when you're procrastinating on something, challenge yourself. Bet you can't get this done in 5 minutes. Bet you can't do this in the next hour. Bet you can't do this. Because sometimes even doing that to myself really triggers me to kind of take action. So, all right, we've covered all four of the elements. We've covered the things that oftentimes are keeping us from procrastinating. I'm going to open it up for any last words from the audience, from Terry. Why don't you kick us off? Your final words on procrastination and getting stuff done. Fire away, my friend.
I love what Francesca said about starting with the outcome and seeing where you want to go. I also want to point out that two of my favorite mental models, one comes from Stoicism, one comes from Buddhism. They both look at attachment as the root of our suffering. Yes, we want to create an outcome, but don't get attached to how you think it's going to happen or what you think it's going to look like. Get attached to doing the work to create the outcome because that's the thing you can control.
Love that. Love the journey. Francesca, your final words.
Absolutely. Over the next week, notice a moment where you're procrastinating instead of judging yourself. Just ask, what am I protecting? What element is popping up? And what's one small action I can take in the next 5 minutes? Just write it down. Try to act on it.
Love that. My final word is when we start to get to that place of fear, uncertainty of the unknown, simply look at it and say, I am adaptable. Because whatever it is that's stopping you from taking action on that, whatever that fear is, once you've kind of become aware of it and recognize this isn't the end all be all. It's not the end of the line. It's not the beginning of the line. I am adaptable. I'm going to be able to overcome. If this doesn't work out the way that I want it, I'm going to be able to adapt to that. If it does, all the better, because we all have that ability to adapt to whether it's a success or a failure. So with that being said, I want to thank you, audience, for joining us on this month's webinar, our Lunch and Learn on procrastination and getting stuff done. As always, please do not hesitate to reach out to Terry, Francesca, or myself if there are ways that we can support you as individuals. We've got some really cool things coming up in the behavioral elements world team, and it's something that we're going to share with you because we want you to be some of our first adopters, but there are some really great things coming up. But thank you for joining us this month as we continue. Until next time, be safe, be healthy, be well, and take care, everybody. Don't procrastinate. Get out there and do it. Terry, Francesca, thank you as always for the beautiful conversation. Look forward to seeing you both here shortly.
Excellent work, y'all. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.
Thanks.